Mystery on Route 66. Trucker vanishes in 2003 and discovery 22 years later. Shocks everyone. An investigative report by Michael Harrison. The desert wind howls across the endless stretch of asphalt that once carried America's dreams westward. Route 66, the Mother Road, has witnessed countless stories of triumph, tragedy, and mystery. But few tales have gripped the nation quite like the case of Marcus Big Mike Patterson, a veteran trucker whose disappearance in 2003 baffled investigators for over 2 decades, until a shocking discovery in 2025 revealed a truth that no one saw coming. The last mile, October 15, 2003. The autumn air carried a crisp promise of winter, as Marcus Patterson, a 47-year-old long-haul trucker from Memphis, Tennessee, prepared for what would become his final documented journey. Standing 6 feet 4 inches tall with calloused hands that told the story of 25 years on America's highways, Big Mike was as reliable as the sunrise. His 2001 Peterbilt 379, a pristine blue rig he'd nicknamed Memphis Belle, was his pride and joy, and his office, bedroom, and sanctuary rolled into one. Patterson's route that October morning was routine. A load of electronics from a warehouse in Barstow, California, destined for a distribution center in Oklahoma City. It was a run he'd made dozens of times before, following the historic Route 66 corridor through Arizona and into New Mexico. The manifest showed he was carrying $2.3 million worth of consumer electronics, laptops, gaming consoles, and digital cameras that were considered cutting-edge technology in 2003. Mike was the most dependable driver we had, recalls Janet Rodriguez, dispatcher for Transcontinental Freight, the company Patterson worked for at the time. In 25 years, he'd never missed a check-in, never been late on a delivery. When he didn't radio in that evening, we knew something was terribly wrong. The last confirmed sighting of Patterson and his rig came from a truck stop in Flagstaff, Arizona, at 2:47 p.m. on October 15th. Security footage showed him filling up his tanks, buying a cup of coffee, and chatting briefly with another driver about weather conditions ahead. He appeared relaxed, even jovial, joking with the cashier about the Chicago Cubs' recent playoff performance. He seemed completely normal, remembers Betty Chen, who was working the register that day. He bought his usual, black coffee, a pack of beef jerky, and one of those apple pies from the warmer. Said he'd be in Albuquerque by nightfall. That was the last anyone saw of him. When the road goes dark, by 10 p.m. that night, Patterson should have been checking into a truck stop in Albuquerque, New Mexico, as per his logbook schedule. When he failed to make radio contact, Transcontinental Freight initiated their standard missing driver protocol. By midnight, they had contacted the New Mexico State Police. What followed was one of the most extensive missing person investigations in the state's history. The search area spanned over 300 miles of desolate highway, from Flagstaff to Albuquerque, covering some of the most unforgiving terrain in the American Southwest. Arizona and New Mexico authorities coordinated efforts, deploying helicopters, ground search teams, and even bringing in volunteers from local trucking communities. The thing about Route 66 through that stretch is that it's both heavily traveled and completely isolated, explains retired New Mexico State Police Detective Ray Sandoval, who led the initial investigation. You've got truckers and tourists passing through regularly, but between the towns there's nothing but desert, canyons, and wilderness areas where a big rig could disappear without a trace. The investigation's first major clue came 3 days later, when a motorist reported seeing what appeared to be truck tire marks leading off the highway near Grants, New Mexico, approximately 78 miles west of Albuquerque. The marks led toward a series of arroyos, deep, dry creek beds that crisscrossed the desert landscape like scars. Search teams followed the tire tracks for nearly 2 miles before they disappeared into rocky terrain. Helicopter surveys of the area revealed nothing conclusive, though investigators noted several locations where a large vehicle might have gone over an embankment and become hidden from aerial view. Theories and dead ends. As days turned into weeks, the investigation expanded beyond a simple missing person case. The value of Patterson's cargo hadn't gone unnoticed by investigators, and theories about hijacking began to circulate. In 2003, cargo theft was becoming increasingly sophisticated, with organized crime rings targeting specific high-value shipments. We had to consider every possibility, says Detective Sandoval. Was this a random crime of opportunity? A planned hijacking? Had Mike encountered mechanical trouble and wandered into the desert seeking help? or was something else entirely going on? The FBI joined the investigation when it became clear that the case involved interstate commerce and potentially organized crime. Special Agent Maria Gutierrez, who worked the case for the Bureau, remembers the challenges they faced. The cargo Mike was carrying would have been extremely valuable on the black market in 2003, she explains. Electronics like that were hot commodities. We investigated known cargo theft rings from Los Angeles to Chicago, looking for any connection to missing shipments or unusual activity around that time frame. Background checks on Patterson revealed a model citizen and dedicated family man. He'd been married to his high school sweetheart Linda for 24 years. They had 2 children, Sarah, 22, who was finishing college, and Michael Jr., 19, who was serving in the Army. Patterson had no criminal record, no gambling debts, no known enemies. His colleagues described him as honest to a fault and deeply religious. Mike wouldn't hurt a fly, says Tommy Rodriguez, a fellow trucker who had known Patterson for over 15 years. He was the guy you'd call if you broke down, the one who'd share his last dollar if you were short on fuel money. The idea that he was involved in anything criminal was just ridiculous. Financial records showed no unusual activity in the months leading up to his disappearance. Patterson's bank accounts, credit cards, and phone records painted the picture of a man living a quiet, routine life. His last phone call had been to his wife the morning of his departure, a brief conversation about their daughter's upcoming graduation and plans for Thanksgiving. A family in limbo. For Linda Patterson and her children, the disappearance of their husband and father created a nightmare that seemed to have no end. With no body found and no definitive evidence of what had happened, they were trapped in a bureaucratic and emotional purgatory. The not knowing was the worst part, Linda Patterson recalls, speaking from her modest home in Memphis. You go to bed every night wondering if tomorrow will be the day you get answers. You wake up every morning hoping the phone will ring with news. Years pass, and that hope becomes both a blessing and a curse. The financial impact was immediate and devastating. Patterson's life insurance policy wouldn't pay out without a death certificate, which couldn't be issued without proof of death. Linda was forced to sell their home and move in with her sister. She took a job at a local grocery store while fighting legal battles to access her husband's pension benefits. The system isn't designed for cases like ours, she explains. Everyone wants to help, but there are rules and procedures that assume you either have a missing person who comes home or a dead person with a body. We had neither. Sarah Patterson, now 44 and a mother of 2, remembers the impact on her younger brother, who was deployed overseas when their father disappeared. Michael Jr. had just gotten to his first duty station when we got the news, she says. Here he was, serving his country, and he couldn't even come home to help look for Dad. The Army gave him leave, but what could he do that the police weren't already doing? It nearly destroyed him. The investigation continues. As months turned into years, the case remained active, but leads grew increasingly cold. Periodic tips would come in, someone claiming to have seen Patterson at a truck stop in Nevada, another reporting a blue Peterbilt abandoned in a canyon in Utah, but each lead was investigated and proved false. In 2005, the case gained national attention when it was featured on America's Most Wanted. The segment generated over 200 tips, but again, none led to any concrete evidence. A psychic from California claimed Patterson's body was buried near a red rock formation, leading to extensive searches in the Sedona area. Nothing was found. The case took an unexpected turn in 2007 when Patterson was declared legally dead by a Tennessee court, allowing his family to finally receive life insurance benefits and survivors' pensions. For Linda and her children, it provided financial relief but emotional devastation. Signing those papers felt like giving up, Linda remembers. Like I was betraying Mike somehow. But we couldn't live in limbo forever. The kids needed to move on with their lives. Despite the legal declaration, investigators never closed the case. New Mexico State Police continued to follow up on occasional tips, and the FBI kept the case in their active files. Advanced DNA testing, satellite imagery, and improved search technologies periodically brought renewed hope, but still no answers. Years of silence. As the investigation entered its second decade, the Patterson case became one of those legendary mysteries that truckers would discuss at truck stops and diners along Route 66. Theories ranged from the plausible to the bizarre: alien abduction, witness protection, voluntary disappearance, cartel involvement. even time travel. Every trucker on 66 has a theory about Big Mike, says Carlos Mendoza, who's been driving the route for 30 years. Some say he found out something he shouldn't have and was eliminated. Others think he's living under a new identity somewhere. The supernatural types talk about the Bermuda Triangle of the desert, places where people just vanish into thin air. The case spawned numerous internet forums, amateur detective groups, and conspiracy theories. Some focused on the unusual electromagnetic properties of the area where Patterson vanished, pointing to nearby military installations and secret government projects. Others suggested connections to other unsolved disappearances along the same stretch of highway. Professional investigators remained focused on more conventional explanations. The harsh desert environment could easily conceal evidence, especially during the frequent flash floods that scour the landscape. Wildlife, extreme temperatures, and the passage of time could eliminate forensic evidence within months. People don't realize how vast and empty this country still is, explains Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a forensic anthropologist who consulted on the case. There are places in New Mexico and Arizona where you could hide a dozen trucks and no one would find them for decades. The desert keeps its secrets. A new generation takes over by 2015. Many of the original investigators had retired or moved on. Detective Sandoval had passed away from cancer in 2012, taking with him years of institutional knowledge about the case. New Mexico State Police assigned the cold case to Detective Jennifer Yazzie, a Navajo Nation member, who brought fresh perspectives to the investigation. When I took over the case, I spent months going through boxes of evidence, reports, and witness statements, Detective Yazzie recalls. What struck me was how thorough the original investigation had been, but also how focused it was on certain assumptions about what had happened. Yazzie began approaching the case from different angles, looking at patterns of other disappearances in the region, examining weather data from the time period, and consulting with tribal elders about the spiritual and cultural significance of the area where Patterson had vanished. In our tradition, the land holds memory, she explains. Sometimes what seems like empty desert is actually a place of great power and meaning. I wanted to understand not just the physical landscape, but the spiritual and cultural context that might have been overlooked. Her investigation uncovered several other unexplained disappearances in the same general area, dating back to the 1970s. While not all involved truckers or even vehicles, the pattern suggested that something about that particular stretch of Route 66 made it a dangerous place to travel alone. Technology advances, hope renewed. By 2020, advances in satellite technology and data analysis offered new possibilities for solving cold cases. Google Earth's historical imagery function allowed investigators to examine decades of aerial photographs, looking for changes in the landscape that might indicate where a vehicle had gone off-road. Dr. Amanda Foster, a geospatial analyst working with the New Mexico State Police, began systematically examining satellite imagery of the search area from 2003 onward. The process was painstaking, requiring examination of thousands of square miles of desert terrain across multiple years of imagery. We were looking for anything unusual, Dr. Foster explains. Disturbed soil, vegetation patterns that might indicate buried objects, reflective surfaces that could be metal, any anomaly that stood out from the natural landscape. The breakthrough almost didn't happen. Dr. Foster was examining imagery from 2019 when she noticed what appeared to be a faint rectangular shadow in a remote arroyo about 15 miles north of the original search area. The shadow was barely visible and only apparent when the sun was at a specific angle. I almost dismissed it, she admits. It could have been a rock formation, shadows from clouds, or any number of natural phenomena, but something about the regularity of the shape bothered me. It looked too geometric to be natural. Further analysis using ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging confirmed that there was indeed a large metallic object buried in the arroyo. The location was so remote that it required a helicopter to transport the excavation team to the site. The discovery. On March 15, 2025, nearly 22 years after Marcus Patterson's disappearance, excavation teams finally uncovered what remained of Memphis Belle. The truck was buried under 12 feet of sand and debris, deposited by decades of flash floods that had gradually filled the arroyo. The discovery was both a triumph and a tragedy. After more than 2 decades of questions, the Patterson family would finally have answers. But those answers would prove far more shocking than anyone had imagined. When we first uncovered the cab, my immediate thought was that we'd found a crime scene, recalls Detective Yazzie. The driver's side door was open, which suggested that Patterson had gotten out of the truck, but there was no sign of him anywhere in the immediate area. The truck's cargo hold was empty, completely cleaned out. The $2.3 million worth of electronics was nowhere to be found. But even more puzzling were the personal items found in the cab. Patterson's wallet containing his driver's license, credit cards, and $247 in cash was sitting on the passenger seat. His cell phone was in the cup holder. A half-eaten apple pie, still in its wrapper from the Flagstaff truck stop, was on the dashboard. It was like he had just stepped outside for a minute, Detective Yazzie explains. Everything personal was there, but the man himself was gone, along with every single piece of cargo. The evidence speaks. Forensic analysis of the truck revealed crucial details about Patterson's final hours. The engine showed no signs of mechanical failure. The fuel tank was nearly empty, but calculations based on his last fill-up in Flagstaff suggested he had driven approximately 200 miles beyond his planned route, far into the desert backcountry. Examination of the truck's electronic systems revealed that the GPS unit had been damaged, but data recovery specialists were able to extract partial information. The last recorded coordinates showed Patterson had been traveling on increasingly remote dirt roads, far from any main highway. The pattern of movement suggested he was following someone or something, explains FBI digital forensics specialist Robert Chen, who analyzed the GPS data. The routes weren't random. They showed purpose and direction, like he was being led somewhere specific. Tire tracks preserved in the hardpan soil around the truck told an even more intriguing story. Analysis revealed the presence of at least 3 other vehicles at the scene, 2 cars and another truck. The tracks suggested the vehicles had been there for some time, with people moving back and forth between them. What we found wasn't consistent with a quick hijacking, says forensic specialist Dr. Patricia Williams. The evidence suggested an extended interaction between Patterson and whoever else was there, possibly several hours, searching for answers in the desert. With the discovery of Memphis Belle, the investigation took on new urgency. Search teams scoured the surrounding area for any trace of Patterson himself, using cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and systematic grid searches covering hundreds of acres. The search revealed additional mysteries. About half a mile from the truck site, investigators found the remains of what appeared to be a temporary camp, fire rings, scattered debris, and evidence that people had stayed in the area for several days or weeks. Among the debris were items that seemed oddly out of place for a desert camp: fragments of expensive electronics, pieces of high-end luggage, and scraps of clothing that appeared to be from designer brands. It was like finding an upscale yard sale in the middle of nowhere, Detective Yazzie recalls. Nothing made sense. What were people doing out there with luxury goods? And how did it connect to Patterson's disappearance? DNA analysis of organic materials found at the campsite revealed biological traces from at least 6 different individuals. Unfortunately, none matched Patterson's DNA, and none were found in any law enforcement databases. The DNA evidence suggested the presence of both men and women, ranging in age from teenagers to elderly adults. Carbon dating of the fire rings indicated they had been used regularly over a period of several years, both before and after Patterson's disappearance. This suggested that whatever operation had been taking place in the desert was long-term and ongoing, not a one-time event. The electronics trail simultaneously, investigators began tracing the stolen electronics from Patterson's truck. In 2003, each laptop, gaming console, and camera had unique serial numbers that were meticulously tracked by manufacturers and retailers. Finding where these items had ended up could provide crucial leads about who was responsible for Patterson's disappearance. The investigation revealed a sophisticated network that stretched from California to New York. Many of the stolen items had been sold through legitimate retail channels, with falsified documentation that made them appear to be returns or refurbished goods. The operation required inside knowledge of manufacturer protocols and retail procedures. This wasn't some opportunistic truck hijacking, explains FBI agent Gutierrez, who was brought back to work on the case. This was part of a larger, highly organized operation that had been running for years. Patterson may have simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, or he may have stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to see. Financial records from various electronics retailers showed suspicious patterns of high-volume returns and exchanges in the months following Patterson's disappearance. Several retail employees from that time period had criminal records for fraud and theft, but most had long since moved on to other jobs or disappeared entirely. Breakthrough in an unexpected place. The case's next major breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a routine audit at a storage facility in Phoenix, Arizona. In late 2025, the facility's management was clearing out abandoned units when they discovered one that had been rented continuously since 2003, but never accessed according to their records. The unit contained boxes of electronics still in their original packaging, items that matched serial numbers from Patterson's missing cargo. But the discovery raised more questions than answers. Why had someone paid rent on a storage unit for over 20 years without ever accessing it? Who was making the payments and why? Investigation of the rental records revealed that the unit had been paid for through a complex series of money transfers involving offshore accounts and shell companies. The paper trail was deliberately convoluted, designed to obscure the true identity of whoever was behind it. Following the money in this case was like peeling an onion, says forensic accountant Lisa Park, who was brought in to trace the financial connections. Every layer we uncovered revealed another layer underneath. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to hide their identity. The human element. While investigators pursued technical and financial leads, they also focused on the human side of the mystery. Who was Marcus Patterson beyond the statistics and evidence reports? What kind of man inspires people to search for him for over 2 decades? Interviews with family, friends, and colleagues painted a picture of a man who was deeply principled and community-minded. Patterson had been active in his church, volunteering with programs that helped ex-offenders find employment in the trucking industry. He was known for his willingness to help stranded motorists and had twice been recognized by the Tennessee Department of Transportation for stopping to assist accident victims. Mike had a thing about helping people, recalls his widow Linda. He couldn't drive past someone in trouble without stopping. I used to worry about him picking up hitchhikers or helping people who might be dangerous. But he'd say, "Linda, what if that was Sarah or Michael Jr. out there needing help? Wouldn't you want someone to stop?" This characteristic may have played a role in whatever happened to Patterson on that October night in 2003. Several witnesses from truck stops along Route 66 remembered seeing him talking to people who appeared to be stranded or in distress. It was entirely consistent with his character that he would have stopped to help someone in trouble, even in a remote area. The conspiracy theories revisited. The discovery of Memphis Belle and the evidence of an organized criminal operation gave new credibility to some of the conspiracy theories that had surrounded the case for years. Investigators began taking a closer look at claims about government involvement, organized crime connections, and the possibility that Patterson had witnessed something he wasn't supposed to see. The area where Patterson disappeared is not far from several military installations, including testing facilities for experimental aircraft and weapon systems. Some theorists had long claimed that Patterson might have accidentally witnessed classified activities and been silenced as a result. "We had to investigate every possibility," Detective Yazzie explains. "When you have a case this unusual, you can't dismiss theories just because they seem far-fetched. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction." Declassified military documents revealed that there had indeed been classified activities in the area during October 2003, including tests of unmanned aerial vehicles and communication systems. However, military investigators found no evidence that Patterson had interfered with or witnessed any classified operations. The organized crime angle proved more promising. Financial analysis revealed connections between the electronics theft ring and known criminal organizations operating along the I-40 corridor. Several individuals with ties to these organizations had been operating in the area during the time of Patterson's disappearance. A cold case heats up. As 2025 drew to a close, the Patterson case had transformed from a cold case mystery into an active criminal investigation involving multiple law enforcement agencies. The discovery of Memphis Belle had provided crucial evidence, but it had also revealed the scope of a criminal enterprise that was far larger than anyone had imagined. The storage unit in Phoenix was just the beginning. Investigators discovered similar units in 7 other states, all containing stolen merchandise dating back years. The operation appeared to have been targeting specific types of cargo, electronics, luxury goods, and high-value consumer items that could be easily resold. We're not just looking at Patterson's disappearance anymore, FBI agent Gutierrez explains. We're looking at what may be one of the largest cargo theft operations in U.S. history, something that's been going on for decades. The investigation revealed a network of corrupt truck stop employees, crooked dispatchers, and criminal gangs who worked together to identify valuable shipments and intercept them at vulnerable points along major trucking routes. Patterson may have been targeted specifically because of his cargo, or he may have accidentally stumbled into an ongoing operation. The search for Marcus. Despite all the evidence and all the investigations, one crucial question remained unanswered. What happened to Marcus Patterson himself? The discovery of his truck had provided closure for his family in some ways, but the question of his ultimate fate continued to haunt everyone involved in the case. Search teams had expanded their efforts to include areas far beyond the truck's location, based on the theory that Patterson might have been taken somewhere else. Ground-penetrating radar surveys, aerial searches, and systematic excavations had covered thousands of acres but had found no trace of him. The hardest part for the family is still not knowing, says Detective Yazzie. They have their truck back. They understand what happened to the cargo, but they don't have their husband and father. That's what they really want. Some final answer about what became of Mike. DNA analysis of materials found throughout the area continued to turn up new profiles, suggesting that many people had passed through the desert site over the years. Some of these profiles matched individuals in law enforcement databases, people with criminal records for theft, fraud, and violent crimes. One particularly intriguing DNA match led investigators to a man named Roberto Sandoval, who had died in a prison in Nevada in 2018 while serving time for armed robbery. Sandoval had been operating in the Southwest during 2003 and had a history of cargo theft and truck hijacking. Prison records revealed that Sandoval had made several cryptic references to the trucker who wouldn't cooperate in conversations with other inmates. While this could have referred to any number of incidents, investigators found the timing and location suspicious. Breakthrough. The witness. In January 2026, the case took its most dramatic turn yet, when a woman named Maria Santos contacted investigators with information that would crack the case wide open. Santos, now 54 and living in California, had been a teenager in 2003, when she witnessed events that she had been too frightened to report at the time. Santos explained that in October 2003, she had been living with her abusive boyfriend in a trailer near the area where Patterson's truck was found. Her boyfriend was involved in stealing and reselling goods, and their isolated location served as a temporary storage and distribution point. I was 19 years old and scared to death, Santos recalls. Miguel, my boyfriend, he was involved with some really dangerous people. I saw things I wasn't supposed to see, and I knew if I talked I'd end up dead. On the night of October 15, 2003, Santos witnessed a confrontation between her boyfriend and several other men, including someone she now realizes was Marcus Patterson. According to her account, Patterson had been forced to drive his truck to their location after being threatened by armed men who had been following him. They told him all they wanted was the cargo, Santos remembers. They said if he cooperated, they'd let him go. But something went wrong. There was shouting, and then things got violent. Santos's testimony provided the missing pieces of the puzzle. She described how Patterson's truck had been unloaded over several hours, with the cargo being transferred to other vehicles. She witnessed Patterson being held at gunpoint and overheard conversations about what to do with him. He kept asking about his family, she says, tears streaming down her face. He said he had a wife and kids, that he wouldn't tell anyone what he'd seen. But the men were arguing about whether they could trust him. The final truth. Maria Santos's testimony, corroborated by physical evidence from the crime scene, finally revealed the truth about Marcus Patterson's fate. According to her account, Patterson was murdered on the night of October 15, 2003, after refusing to cooperate with demands that he help cover up the theft by falsifying his logbooks and reporting his truck stolen. He could have gone along with it, Santos explains. They offered to pay him to report his truck stolen, to say he'd been hijacked and left in the desert. His cargo would disappear, but he'd collect insurance money and everyone would walk away. But he wouldn't do it. He said it was wrong, that it would hurt the people he worked for. Patterson's moral stance cost him his life. Santos witnessed his murder and helped dispose of his body in a location far from where his truck was buried. The criminals had hoped that without a body or a truck, the case would remain unsolved indefinitely. They were smart about it, Detective Yazzie acknowledges. By separating the truck from the body and hiding both carefully, they eliminated most of the evidence. If not for advances in satellite technology, and Santos finally finding the courage to come forward, we might never have solved this case. Justice delayed Santos's testimony led to the identification of several individuals involved in Patterson's murder, though many had died or disappeared in the intervening decades. The criminal network she described had operated for years, stealing millions of dollars worth of cargo and leaving a trail of victims across the Southwest. Roberto Sandoval, who had died in prison, was identified as the ringleader of the operation. His death meant he could never be prosecuted, but his criminal associates were tracked down by law enforcement agencies across multiple states. In March 2026, federal prosecutors announced indictments against 7 individuals connected to Patterson's murder and the broader cargo theft operation. The charges ranged from murder conspiracy to racketeering, with sentences potentially reaching life in prison. This case represents more than just one man's tragic death, said U.S. Attorney Jennifer Martinez at a press conference announcing the indictments. It represents our commitment to never giving up on victims and their families, no matter how much time passes. Bringing Marcus home. The final chapter in Marcus Patterson's story came in April 2026 when Santos led investigators to the location where his remains had been buried. The site, in a remote canyon more than 50 miles from where his truck was found, had been carefully chosen to ensure the body would never be discovered accidentally. After 23 years, Marcus Patterson was finally coming home. His remains were recovered and returned to his family for burial, providing the closure that Linda, Sarah, and Michael Jr. had waited decades to receive. It's not the ending we hoped for all those years ago, Linda Patterson says, but it's an ending. We can finally lay Mike to rest with dignity, and we know the truth about what happened to him. That's more than many families in our situation ever get. The funeral service for Marcus Patterson was held on May 15, 2026, at the same Memphis church where he had been married 24 years earlier. Hundreds of people attended, including truckers from across the country who had followed his story for years. Legacy of the road. The Marcus Patterson case has become more than just a solved mystery. It's become a symbol of perseverance, justice, and the bonds that hold families and communities together. The investigation spanned nearly a quarter century, involved hundreds of law enforcement officers, and cost millions of dollars. But for those who knew Patterson, and those who worked to find him, no expense was too great. Mike represented the best of what truckers are supposed to be, says Tommy Rodriguez, Patterson's old friend who spoke at the funeral. Honest, hard-working, willing to help others. The fact that his decency cost him his life makes this tragedy even worse, but the fact that people never gave up looking for him shows that his values live on. The case has also led to improvements in cargo security and trucker safety protocols. The criminal network that targeted Patterson had exploited weaknesses in communication and tracking systems that have since been upgraded. Modern GPS tracking, satellite communication, and digital security measures make it much harder for criminals to intercept and steal cargo without detection. We learned a lot from this case about how criminal organizations target the trucking industry, explains FBI agent Gutierrez. Those lessons have helped us prevent other crimes and protect other drivers from suffering the same fate as Marcus Patterson. The route continues today. Route 66 continues to carry travelers across the American Southwest, just as it did on that October night in 2003, when Marcus Patterson disappeared into the desert darkness. The highway has been modernized with better lighting, improved communication coverage, and enhanced security measures. But the essential character of the Mother Road remains unchanged, a symbol of American freedom, opportunity, and the open road. Near the spot where Patterson's truck was discovered, the New Mexico Department of Transportation has installed a small memorial marker. It's not an elaborate monument, just a simple plaque that reads, "In memory of Marcus Big Mike Patterson and all who have traveled this road in service to others." Truckers who pass the marker often stop to pay their respects, leaving small tokens, a cup of coffee, a pack of beef jerky, or a simple prayer. The trucking community has a long memory, and Marcus Patterson's story has become part of the folklore of the road. Lessons from the desert. The Patterson case offers lessons that extend far beyond law enforcement and trucking safety. It's a story about the importance of never giving up, about the power of technology to solve cold cases, and about the courage it takes to speak truth to power, even decades after the fact. Maria Santos, whose testimony finally solved the case, has become an advocate for victims of domestic violence and criminal intimidation. Her decision to come forward after 23 years of silence required tremendous courage, knowing that it would expose her to potential retaliation from surviving members of the criminal network. "I lived with guilt and fear for over 20 years, Santos explains. But seeing how much pain the Patterson family was in, knowing that I had information that could help them, I finally realized I had to speak up. Some things are more important than being afraid." Detective Jennifer Yazzie, who led the final phase of the investigation, has used the Patterson case as a model for approaching other cold cases involving missing persons and organized crime. Her methodical approach and willingness to consider unconventional theories helped crack a case that had stumped investigators for decades. "The Patterson case taught me that you can never assume a case is unsolvable," she reflects. "Evidence is always out there somewhere. Technology keeps advancing. People's circumstances change, and witnesses who couldn't speak before may find the courage to come forward. You have to stay patient and keep working." The family's journey. For the Patterson family, the resolution of Marcus's case has brought both closure and a new chapter in their lives. Linda Patterson, now in her 70s, has become an advocate for families of missing persons, working with organizations that provide support and resources to people dealing with similar situations. "No family should have to go through what we went through," she says. "The not knowing, the bureaucratic battles, the financial hardships, it's a nightmare that goes on and on. But if our experience can help other families navigate the system and find answers, then maybe some good can come from our tragedy." Sarah Patterson has written a book about her family's experience, titled "Waiting for Answers: A Daughter's Journey Through Loss and Hope." The book has become a resource for other families dealing with missing loved ones, providing practical advice and emotional support. Michael Patterson Jr., who served multiple tours in Afghanistan and Iraq after his father's disappearance, has found that his military experience gave him tools for dealing with uncertainty and loss that proved valuable throughout the long investigation. "The Army taught me that sometimes you don't get the answers you want, but you keep fighting anyway," he reflects. "That's what we did with Dad's case. We never stopped fighting for answers. And eventually, we got them." Continuing impact. The Patterson case continues to resonate within law enforcement and the trucking industry. It has been featured in numerous training programs for police investigators, demonstrating the importance of persistence in cold case investigations and the value of new technologies in solving old crimes. The case has also influenced federal legislation aimed at improving cargo security and trucker safety. The Marcus Patterson Trucking Safety Act, introduced in Congress in 2026, would mandate improved GPS tracking, enhanced communication systems, and standardized protocols for reporting missing drivers. Marcus Patterson's death was a preventable tragedy, says Representative Susan Martinez, who sponsored the legislation. By strengthening safety protocols and security measures, we can help ensure that no other trucker suffers the same fate. The trucking industry has embraced these reforms, recognizing that driver safety and cargo security are essential to maintaining public trust and operational efficiency. Major trucking companies have invested millions of dollars in new technologies and training programs designed to protect their drivers and shipments. The endless highway. As I conclude this investigation into the Marcus Patterson case, I'm struck by the complexity of truth itself. For 23 years, this case existed in the realm of speculation and theory. Families grieved without closure. Investigators pursued leads that went nowhere, and an entire community wondered what had happened to one of their own. The truth, when it finally emerged, was both simpler and more complicated than anyone had imagined. Simpler because it involved familiar elements: greed, violence, and criminal enterprise. More complicated because it revealed a vast network of corruption and crime that had operated for decades without detection. The price of integrity. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of Marcus Patterson's story is that his death could have been avoided if he had simply been willing to compromise his principles. The criminals offered him a way out: report his truck stolen, collect insurance money, and walk away. It would have been easy, profitable, and safe. But Marcus Patterson was not a man who took the easy way out. His friends and family consistently describe him as someone who did the right thing, even when it was difficult or costly. That integrity, which made him beloved by those who knew him, ultimately cost him his life. Dad always said that your word is all you really have, reflects Sarah Patterson. He taught us that once you compromise your principles, it gets easier and easier to compromise them again. He wouldn't help those criminals even though it would have saved his life, because it would have hurt innocent people. This moral courage resonates beyond the specifics of Patterson's case. In a world where ethical shortcuts are often rewarded and principled stands are sometimes punished, his example serves as a reminder that some things are more important than personal safety or financial gain. The technology revolution. The Patterson case also illustrates how dramatically investigative technology has advanced over the past quarter century. When Patterson disappeared in 2003, GPS tracking was rudimentary, cell phones were basic, and satellite imagery was limited. The tools that eventually solved his case, advanced satellite analysis, DNA sequencing, digital forensics, and sophisticated financial tracking, were either unavailable or in their infancy. If this case had happened today, it probably would have been solved within weeks instead of decades, observes Dr. Amanda Foster, the geospatial analyst whose satellite work located Memphis Belle. Modern trucks have constant GPS tracking. Drivers have smartphones with emergency features and cargo is monitored in real time. The criminals' methods simply wouldn't work in today's environment. This technological evolution offers hope for other cold cases. Across the country, law enforcement agencies are revisiting decades-old unsolved cases with new tools and techniques. DNA databases have expanded exponentially. Digital analysis can recover information from damaged devices that were once thought hopeless, and artificial intelligence can identify patterns in vast amounts of data that would take human investigators years to process. The human cost of crime. While the technical aspects of the Patterson case are fascinating, it's important not to lose sight of the human cost. Marcus Patterson's death created ripple effects that extended far beyond his immediate family. His employer lost a valued employee, the trucking community lost a respected colleague, and society lost a man who consistently chose to help others. The criminals who killed Patterson thought they were simply eliminating a witness to their crimes. They failed to understand that they were destroying a life that touched many others in positive ways. The investigation revealed dozens of people whose lives had been affected by Patterson's kindness and generosity, fellow truckers he had helped, accident victims he had assisted, young people he had mentored through his church work. When you murder someone like Mike Patterson, you're not just taking one life, observes Detective Yazzie. You're diminishing an entire community. The world becomes a little less kind, a little less helpful, a little less decent. This broader impact of violent crime is often overlooked in discussions of criminal justice. The focus tends to be on the immediate victim and their family, but crimes like Patterson's murder affect entire communities, creating fear, distrust, and cynicism that can persist for generations. Lessons for law enforcement. The Patterson case has become a textbook example of cold case investigation, studied in police academies and FBI training programs across the country. It demonstrates the importance of maintaining detailed records, following up on seemingly minor leads, and never completely closing a case until all questions are answered. The original investigators did excellent work with the tools they had available, notes retired FBI profiler Dr. James Morrison, who has studied the case extensively. They preserved evidence, documented everything thoroughly, and kept the case active even when leads went cold. That groundwork made it possible for later investigators to solve the case when new technology became available. The case also highlights the value of interdisciplinary cooperation. The solution required expertise from multiple fields: satellite analysis, DNA forensics, financial investigation, digital recovery, and traditional detective work. No single investigator or agency had all the necessary skills, but by working together, they were able to piece together the truth. Perhaps most importantly, the case demonstrates the crucial role that witnesses play in solving crimes. Without Maria Santos's eventual decision to come forward, the case might never have been solved despite all the technological advances. Her testimony provided the human context that made sense of all the physical evidence. The courage to speak. Maria Santos's decision to break decades of silence required enormous courage. She knew that coming forward would expose her to potential danger from surviving members of the criminal network. She also knew that she would face criticism for waiting so long to speak up. "I understand why people are angry that I didn't come forward sooner," Santos says. "But people who criticize me don't understand what it was like to be a 19-year-old girl living with a violent man, surrounded by dangerous criminals. I was afraid for my life, and I had good reason to be afraid." Santos's experience highlights the challenges that witnesses face in coming forward, particularly in cases involving organized crime or domestic violence. Fear of retaliation, distrust of law enforcement, and concern about being believed are all significant barriers that prevent people from reporting what they know. The Patterson case has led to improvements in witness protection programs and victim advocacy services. Law enforcement agencies have developed better procedures for encouraging witnesses to come forward and protecting them when they do. We learned that we need to be more patient with witnesses and more understanding of why they might be reluctant to speak up, explains FBI Agent Gutierrez. Sometimes the information comes years or even decades after the crime, but it's never too late to seek justice. The enduring mystery, even with the case officially solved, some aspects of Marcus Patterson's story remain mysterious. The full extent of the criminal network that killed him may never be known. Some of the key figures died before they could be prosecuted, taking their secrets with them. The desert location where the criminals operated continues to yield evidence of their activities. Ongoing excavations have uncovered additional stolen merchandise, personal belongings from other victims, and evidence of a criminal enterprise that may have been responsible for numerous unsolved crimes across the Southwest. "We may never know the full scope of what these people did," admits Detective Yazzie. Patterson's case is solved, but there are probably other victims out there whose families still don't have answers. We're continuing to investigate, but some secrets may be buried forever in that desert. This uncertainty is frustrating for investigators and families of other missing persons, but it's also a reminder of how much criminal activity goes undetected and unpunished. The Patterson case was solved because of a combination of advanced technology, dedicated investigators, and a witness who finally found the courage to speak. Not all cases have those advantages. The route forward, Route 66, continues to carry thousands of travelers every day, most of whom are unaware of the tragedy that occurred along its lonely stretches more than 2 decades ago. The highway has been upgraded and improved, with better lighting, enhanced communication coverage, and increased security patrols. Modern truckers benefit from safety technologies that didn't exist in Patterson's time. GPS tracking systems monitor vehicle locations continuously. Panic buttons can summon help instantly, and cargo monitoring systems alert dispatchers to any unusual activity. These improvements make the roads safer, but they can't eliminate all risks. "The technology helps, but it's not foolproof," observes veteran trucker Carlos Mendoza. "There are still remote areas where cell coverage is spotty, still places where someone could run into trouble. The key is staying alert, following safety protocols, and never traveling alone if you can avoid it." The trucking industry has embraced these safety improvements while also working to preserve the independence and flexibility that have always been hallmarks of the profession. It's a delicate balance between security and freedom, but one that most drivers accept as necessary in an increasingly complex world. A memorial in motion. Perhaps the most fitting memorial to Marcus Patterson is not the roadside marker near where his truck was found, but the living memory maintained by the trucking community. His story has become part of the oral tradition of the road, passed down from veteran drivers to newcomers as both a cautionary tale and an inspiration. "We tell the story not to scare people, but to remind them of what it means to be a trucker," explains Tommy Rodriguez. "Mike Patterson represents the best of what we are: honest, helpful, reliable. When new drivers hear his story, they understand that this is more than just a job. It's about serving others and doing the right thing." This tradition of storytelling has always been important in trucking culture, but the Patterson case has elevated it to something approaching legend. His story is told at truck stops, driving schools, and industry gatherings across the country. It has inspired safety protocols, influenced legislation, and shaped the way an entire industry thinks about ethics and responsibility. The final mile. As I sit in my office, looking out at the city lights and thinking about the long road that led to solving Marcus Patterson's case, I'm reminded of why stories like this matter. They're not just about crime and punishment, or even about justice and closure. They're about the values that hold society together: integrity, perseverance, courage, and the belief that truth will eventually prevail. Marcus Patterson could not have imagined that his final journey would become a decades-long odyssey involving hundreds of investigators, cutting-edge technology, and a legal battle that would span multiple states. He was simply a man doing his job, trying to make an honest living and support his family, but his refusal to compromise his principles in the face of mortal danger transformed him into something larger than life. The criminals who killed him thought they could make him disappear without a trace. They underestimated the power of love, the persistence of investigators, and the relentless march of technology. Most importantly, they underestimated the impact that one good man's life and death could have on the world. Today, Marcus Patterson's legacy lives on in improved safety protocols that protect other truckers, in legislation that strengthens cargo security, and in the memory of a man who chose principle over profit, integrity over safety, and truth over lies. His final mile became a journey that changed an entire industry and reminded us all of what it means to do the right thing, no matter the cost. The highway stretches on, carrying new travelers toward their own destinations, their own challenges, and their own moments of choice. And somewhere along that endless ribbon of asphalt, Marcus Patterson's spirit continues to ride, watching over those who follow in his tracks and reminding them that some things, honor, decency, and the courage to stand up for what's right, are worth more than life itself. The mystery on Route 66 is solved, but the story it tells about human nature, justice, and the price of integrity will endure as long as there are roads to travel and people willing to take them. In the end, that may be Marcus Big Mike Patterson's greatest gift to the world. Not just the solution to a 23-year-old mystery, but a timeless reminder of what it means to be truly decent in an indecent world. This investigation was made possible by the cooperation of the New Mexico State Police, the FBI, the Patterson family, and numerous individuals who shared their memories and expertise. Special thanks to Detective Jennifer Yazzie, whose dedication and innovative approach made solving this case possible after more than 2 decades. About the author. Michael Harrison is an investigative journalist specializing in cold cases and organized crime. He has written extensively about law enforcement, criminal justice, and the human stories behind major crimes. This is his 3rd book examining unsolved cases that were ultimately resolved through advances in technology and investigative techniques.